Welcome to Brightly, you radiant being, the show that wildly recognizes, encourages, and invests in the radiance we all carry so you can shine your brightest. Each episode, we use our good and bad experiences, friendship, and passions to inspire thought provoking conversation and soul driven advice. This season, we'll travel from the fool's journey to the hero's adventure to better help you create a life worth living and step more brightly into yourself inch by inch.
Hello, my friend.
Hi, happy magical 111.
Oh, I know. I know. Gosh, we had so many plans that we were going to do for episode 111, and then we just didn't do any of them.
We
But
did? I was
yeah,
gonna say, I remember we way back when we were looking at like our 100th episode in the distance, you even mentioned that Rick, your husband, was like, "Are you gonna do anything for like milestone?" And we were both like, "Well, 100's not a milestone for us. It's 111." And I know we talked about like wanting to do something for it, but you had big plans?
yeah, because talking about wanting to do something for it is actually big plans for me.
And here I was like, oh my God, did I take over? Like, did I miss
No,
a production meeting?
no,
Because
no.
I mean, as it's been coming, we've been talking about myth, right? So as I just, read, we've been, last year was the Fool's Journey, like through the tarot cards to the world. And then now, you started us off this year with the heroine's adventure. Um, and now here we are, still talking about myth this year. And uh I was really struck by something Joseph Campbell said in The Power of Myth. I don't think I've brought this up yet, and I didn't rewatch it to get a quote by quote, but the interviewer had asked him, with the lack of myth in today's society, which when they recorded it was like the early 80s, right? Um, and so he's like, with the lack of myth in our society, how do you kind of see that, transgressing? What are the effects of that? And Joseph Campbell took a very negative spin and brought it to like a lack of morals and decencies, and like brought up like the hooligans and the crime and the miscreants. And I mean, I'm putting words in his mouth,
Really?
but if you were to listen to that, it really came down to like the myths gave us like a structure, right? Like a church does kind of, right? Which gives you
Okay.
like a society, like not like a secret society, but more than like civilization society, like oh, my grandpa was a part of something, the kings or anyways. But he really equated it to like a lack of rules and a lack of like structure, and that's making everybody go crazy. Now, we know a lot about disparities these days, and I don't think it's a lack of myth that is driving crime. So we're
Right.
gonna back away from his already outdated in the 80s thought. But what do you think a lack of myth does to society? Have you ever thought about that?
I
Or like
have
the effect on a world?
I think that, but right away when you asked that question, the first thing that popped into my mind was that it would sort of take hope out of the equation. I feel like myth is sort of that hopeful thing.
Mm.
I, I and that's just the first thing that came into my head.
Yeah. For me, I equate so much of myth and mythology and like stories. For me, when I hear the word myth, I immediately go to Greek mythology, right? So,
Mhm.
Greek gods and goddesses and these stories that, teach lessons or really highlight archetypes, which you bring up a lot on the show. But I had the same thought that I feel like a lack of myth is really a lack of magic, wonder, and hope. And that just
Oh,
disengagement that gives you from wanting to live an everyday life, right? Like, um, I've been listening to this Esther Hicks Abraham
mhm.
morning meditation series, and she always talks about how like there's going to be contradictions in your day, there's going to be traffic and other people, right? And she keeps bringing all that up, and I was like, yeah, without myth, all I have are the contradictions of my day. It's the grocery shopping and the to-do list and the chores and and you hope relationships and people. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that can bring magic, wonder, and hope to your life. But I was like, oh, there's that like thinking that there's something more than this that just makes it all worth it. Those
Yeah,
moments when it doesn't.
absolutely. Absolutely. I actually I brought it down because I knew we were talking about 111 and magic and myth. And I own the ebook, but I always get the physical book from the library. I should
What
have just
is it?
the physical book.
I
It's
need
called Life.
books.
It's called Life Magic by Laura Bushnell.
Oh,
And it's the renowned psychic healer shares her 7 keys to finding your power and living your purpose. But one of the first activities she has you do is create a sign, and you have it by your bed. And then when you wake up in the morning, that's the first thing you do. So when I wake up in the morning, I put my hand on this sign that I made so that it reminds me that something magical is
it's all
about.
blurry.
Oh, darn it. There we go. Here.
Something magical is abound. Is that what it says?
No, something magical is about to happen.
Aw, you have the
So,
best morning routines. Like you wake up and you greet your happy organs and then you put your hand on a sign. Like I
well,
love
and
it.
now I do my brain room, and my brain
And
room
you
has been added to the activity too. And then yeah, my hand goes on that sign before my feet touch the ground, just because it's a reminder to me that no matter how mundane the day might seem, or might start, or might feel, that you can always find magic in it. So,
I was gonna ask, what is magic, but you just encapsulate it perfectly. It's the opposite of mundane, right? Or
yeah,
I'm gonna say the absence of mundane, right? Or
yeah.
mundane with fairy dust on it. But I I don't think that how I envision magic, wonder, and hope is it is what that is what is keeping me from crime. So I
Yeah,
really
that really disturbs
it
me.
was such an interesting take because when I think of myth and magic in modern society, I don't have like a modern mythology or story to go back to. Like the Greek gods and goddesses, I don't really use those lessons in my day to day. They're just stories that I heard in eighth grade and I, wanted to be Athena, right? Like, um, and
So
so
I
it's,
feel that families have modern myths. Like, I don't know. I consider like there's certain myths in my family.
any
The
you're
the
willing to
myth,
share.
well, as little as I know, because also I'm the youngest and nobody told me diddly. I just had to scrap little pieces of information together. So the myth in our family is that my grandfather came over. This is not a myth, this is a reality. My grandfather came over when he was 12 with his father from Yugoslavia. Okay. The myth is, and he did state it himself, although I don't know how you find out, is that his family was wrong. And so he came to the United States, and when my mother was born, he wanted to pierce her ears, and my grandmother wouldn't let him do that. And so, of course, at the time growing up, we did not have the term Rom. So pardon me, we did say gypsy, but my grandfather called himself a gypsy as
Yeah.
well. And for me, that was like so magical, because to me, the word gypsy did not mean like a thief
Yeah.
or someone who was unhoused or stole or cheated you. To me, that meant you were mystical and magical and had powers, and you lived in a community and you cared for each other. And so that was like our family. That's one of our family myths.
Do you, okay, so you have children and you have a grandchild.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you have a goal or an aspiration to be the myth, a future myth of your family?
Oh, 100% I do.
Are
I
you,
feel like my mother has already achieved that status.
yes, yes. I love that. Do you think she was doing that intentionally? Like beyond just wanting to be inspiring, but to like, yeah, I mean, listen, she's quoted on a podcast regularly.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I think that she always wanted to leave a legacy, but for her, she wanted to leave a legacy so that we could have something. I think for her, a legacy meant money.
Mm.
And I told her when she was dying, it was like, you did leave us a legacy. It was everything you taught us. And she
Right?
just looked at me like,
Independence, freedom. Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's a little bit different than myth though, because like for me, so my grandmother just celebrated her 90th birthday on March 23rd. And until she had a stroke about 3 or 4 years ago. And it wasn't until then that I saw her as more than just like a working woman in the world. Like, kind of like your mom, she's like instilled a lot in me. Like, her husband died when she was relatively young and she kept going. She took care of herself, she took care of her family. Like, I got a lot of independence from her and I've learned a lot from her. But after she had her stroke, I started really intentionally asking her questions and recording them. And she started to tell me these stories of her own magical, mystical, spiritual experiences. Like she'd go on vacations and she's very religious, so they'd go and check out this old church, and she would have some of the craziest stories come out of it. She's shared with me some of the things that happened and that her and her brother saw as a kid, as teenagers. All these stories are just coming out. And here, I always thought I was like the black sheep of the family for getting into like this kind of magic and more spirituality and divination side of stuff.
It's just genetics.
It's genetic. Well, and I've heard there's lore that it typically does come from the paternal grandmother side or whatever, right? So it's more likely my other grandmother's passed on, so I can't ask these same questions from her. She died much younger. Um, but so now I'm kind of wondering, I don't have kids yet, but I was like, ooh, what can I play up for the my nieces and nephews? Like what kind of mythology? Like I love that. What kind of family myths, I can't say that word, do you have? And how do you play into them intentionally or not? I mean, I wonder, it's one of those things where you wonder what's happening without you knowing it, right? Like what are they building on their own?
Right. Because you know that they are. You have to know that they already are. So, and I feel as if you tried to do it intentionally, it would negate it. It was like that's not how myth works. You can't try
Well,
to do
no,
it
not
intentionally.
super. Maybe when by intention, then I mean, not like creating a 10-step plan with a goal and like enacting it
A
out.
PowerPoint.
I'm thinking more like speaking more openly, intentionally with them on certain topics or sharing more things
I
about myself,
love that. Yes,
and
I
like
love that.
beliefs and credences, because I just read something in a book today. It was in the forward. It was like, I don't think it was the second sentence. I think it was a semicolon of the first sentence. And I was like, oh, this is a moment of magic in my life today because this is today's topic. And Amy and I hadn't settled on the outline yet. But though all the while I was reading the rest of this book, I was trying to think about ways in which I can help teach my nieces and nephews this and share it with them and like help them not have to wait until they're 38 and a half to like kind of intentionally instill some of these things, that and a lot of it's stuff we talk about on the show, and they're fascinated that auntie's on Spotify, but they don't know how easy that is. I don't think that they're listening weekly.
Well, yeah, and you don't want to let them know how easy it is because then that removes part of that myth.
Right, there we go. So like family myth, auntie's very popular on Spotify. But okay, so back to the quote. So it's Deepak Chopra's Creating Affluence. And the forward, it's like maybe two paragraphs. I love how he's on the cover and he wrote maybe 150 words. But Richard Carlson, and he says, and this is kind of like I said, the end of after a semicolon, but he said, seeing life not as a struggle, but as a magical adventure where our needs are met with grace and ease.
And there's that grace and ease again, a magical adventure. You know what else this reminds me of? I think it was the last episode where you were sharing how someone shared with you, how can you take that fear and flip it into excitement?
Excitement, the
And so
other
instead
side
of
of
a
it.
challenge, it's a magical, what did they say? A magical
See life not as a struggle, but as a
Yes.
magical adventure where our needs are
Yes.
met with grace and ease.
Yes. And I feel like we've talked about that before, not in
That's a
those
huge part of the
terms.
show, right? Is
That
like,
is that adventure, that quest, and how to create that life that feels like that.
well, and I think it's like it goes hand in hand. The whole point of like living your brightest life is so you can enjoy the magical adventure, right? Like
If
if
you're not living your brightest life, you don't even see the magic.
ding 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 ding.
Yeah.
Um so I've gotten to a few conversations with people, some incredibly religious in Christianity and really steadfast in their faith and treat the Bible as like actual stories. And then the same conversation with people on the other side of the spectrum, atheist, don't believe in a God, don't like the compliance and rules and aspects piece of religion. And whenever I bring up some of the topics we kind of talk about on here that aren't, just personal development related around magic, more or less, right? In these moments and the randomness of it, or, the statistical likelihood or anomalies of it all, or whatever, they both kind of ask the same thing like well, what's the point, right? Or like, how is it beautiful if it's random and not pre-planned, or if it's not, this or that? And I find the beauty in the random, and I find it's like layered to me, right? Like I am steadfast a Virgo. I live in the earthly realm. I'm very grounded to the point where people have to remind me it's not about the outcome, enjoy the wait, enjoy the process, right? Like I am very grounded, but then I have this another layer where it was like, but there's more. And then even above that, but there's more. So like what does magic feel like to you? What is magic to you in all of this then? What is a magical adventure of
I
your
feel
life?
like a magical adventure is being open to surprises along the way, and not just open to, but to, like they said, to see the struggle. But for me, it would be to see a surprise and think, oh, someone's giving me a gift. This is a
It's for
gift. What
me.
can I do with this?
That's one thing I do like about magic. What I was thinking about that side of it today, and I'm glad that you said it. There's an inherently selfish piece of magic. There is it's a privilege, right, to get to believe in it and to try and ride it for sure.
Try and
um
write it. I like.
but there is a bit of like, oh, I saw that license plate, that was a sign for me, right? Like that's my special number right there. Oh, I caught the clock just at this time. Or oh, something told me to go to the gas station, I won $50 on a scratch off on Monday. Like
I mean, so I feel like magic in and of itself is also so many different things. It's pieces and parts of all kinds of different things, and it comes to us in different ways. Magic is also like if you were to ask, someone who maybe was Wiccan or a witch, I think that magic, they would say that it is like an intentional uh, focusing of your thoughts or desires into like a ritual and then
mm,
creating a spell or something like that. Or maybe that's the definition of a spell. I don't know. Um, so I feel that magic, while surprising and random, can also be intentional. We can intentionally be focused on something magical. Like, well, you can't see it because I blurred it out, but we all, if you ever watched this before, I have a plethora of things around me that would be considered magical objects. Do they contain magic, or do I contain the magic? Or is it a combination of
ooh,
both?
does magic depend on something witnessing, creating, or receiving it? Is it like a sound in the forest? Does it
Right,
exist?
right. Does it? I mean, I think that's a brilliant question. Or is it just randomly happening behind our backs? I don't know. Wouldn't that be kind of fun though? Just to be like, who knows what kind of magic is happening out in the forest right now?
I love that. I hope there is. I hope it doesn't. I don't think magic requires human intervention or witness. Um, I love how some of everything you just said, but that also made me think about how like magic can also be explained, right? Like a rainbow is magical, prisms are magical, light is magical, and I have a
Yeah.
scientific explanation for it. But
And
everything you
it's still magical.
so magical, and it's still a magical moment when you get to see it, right? Because I don't know about you, I don't know if there are rainbow forecasters out there, right? Like it's more or less it just happens and the people who get to see it, right? Like
Like storm chasers. I want to be a rainbow chaser.
rainbow chasers, where's that double rainbow guy?
Yeah.
But I also feel like everything you said about whether it's a spell or what people who actively try and create and manifest or have intentional magic moments, everything you said reminded me it's quantum physics, it's energy, right? Like there's this whole field of science that if you heard about it,
Yes.
you know, if you really dove into it, you would think it's pseudoscience, and it is not.
Quantum field, quantum physics. It's freaking study of magic, is what it is.
Right? And magic, I feel like at its core is energy work, right?
Yeah.
It's being
Yeah,
attuned
I would
to the
agree.
energy around you. And what you were saying before, like if you're really intentional with your thoughts, you can kind of change the energy in your space. And all those magical objects, I'm, you know, say it as I'm holding a crystal right now that you talked about, what made me be like, oh, are humans needed for the magic to exist? Because these crystals that everybody, you know, picks up and they do stuff to us, so we are needed in a sense for that component. But like I feel like these objects radiate an energy. I feel like there's stuff in the earth that radiate an energy that's greater than the purpose that we know it to be here for.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Yeah.
I've been
Yeah.
seeing a lot on social media lately about like people who talk to trees and like the magic trees hold, and just like look at all the wood around us, right? Like look at all the trees around us. Look at all like there's this whole aspect to magic that's about the elements, right? Like how do you feel around water? We're water. How does the moon make us feel? Because the moon affects water, right? Again, there's science behind it, but I feel like there's like this energy. And if you're tapped into it, if you're tuned into these magical moments, you can kind of do what you're saying before. You can do something with it.
Right. So then I would ask, is is magic energy or is energy magic? Or are they just interchangeable? And do we just call it magic because at to begin with we couldn't explain it?
Yes.
All good questions.
You gotta vamp Amy. My my spotlight fell on
Yeah.
my.
Well, I have no idea where we are in the notes, but I'm going to tell one quick little story. When I was little, and I might have already told this story, but I'm going to tell it again. So when I was little, my mom, it only happened a few times, like maybe 2 or 3 times, but it was enough and it was burned into my memory. We had a very, very tiny backyard behind the house. Really big front yard, side yard, but behind the house, it was just like this strip of land. And there were 2 plum trees that were planted there. And there was a little tiny, she had put in a little pond, and there's a St. Francis statue because why not? So the plum trees every spring would, of course, blossom. And she would say, let's go look for fairies. And we would go in the backyard, and in the plum trees, we'd look for fairies. Now, I don't remember how long it would go for. I don't remember if like we thought we saw 1 or 3 or whatever. All I know is the feeling inside of me, because there was a possibility that there were fairies there.
And that goes back to that the wonder of life, right? Like you had, I think that's why we love children and we call it, oh, to be naive like a child. But I really think it's about holding on to, like, as an adult, what do you have wonder for?
Oh, I like it. Yes. What gives you wonder? What gives you awe? What I love that. and there are times that I'm like, how could I recreate that feeling? Like, what could
I mean, you could go look for some fairies, Amy.
I do things for the fairies because I want to stay friends. So I have fun little trinkets in my house plants. All my house plants have fun little trinkets, and I give little offerings outside. I don't care. You can fight me on it. I don't care because it doesn't hurt anyone that I'm doing it.
Yeah, I love that. But yeah, how do we as adults how do you look for the magic, right? So, we've talked a lot, like we ask for signs and symbols and we attribute, angel numbers are all the rage these days, right? Like everybody loves catching those repeating numbers and things like that. So those are little ways every day where like, or even like right now, it's 4:56 p.m. And that means absolutely nothing to anybody, but I like it when things are in sequence or reverse sequence and I
Yeah.
happen to catch it. It's a little thing and it's going to happen a lot, right? But it's a little thing that throughout my day, when it does happen, I just go, oh, I caught it, right? Like, and then I'm back to my day. But it's just like this little moment in my life where I'm like, oh. Or like my sisters and I have some numbers or like birthday numbers are really special or things like that. Or, I'm driving along and I catch a license plate and suddenly like a rough drive doesn't suck anymore just for a second, right? But it's a little thing. It's probably now some weird obsessive tick, but it makes me smile when it happens. And so it's like, what else can we pepper into our day where it's not like as time consuming as searching for fairies for 3 hours on a Saturday, but we'll
Right. But
still give a little moment.
I think part of it, and we kind of alluded to this in the beginning or said it outright, I can't remember already, is that expectation. Do you expect to see, to feel, to find something magical? So if you have an expectation for something, chances are you will find it because we love to find proof of what we're looking
Yeah.
for, right? And also, I feel that at any given moment, you can stop and say, what would feel magical in this moment? And maybe it's not an outside force magic. Maybe it's not an angel number. Maybe it's just sitting down and lighting a pretty candle and having a cup of tea, and that would feel magical to you.
Or even if you're just out and about, when I was a little kid, I used to have my weather stick. I think I've brought this up on the show before. I had a
Yeah.
special stick stashed by the stairs to the front of our house, and I totally controlled the wind that summer. So now sometimes I feel the wind and I'm like, yeah, I did that. I did that. You're welcome. It felt really good. But so I love how you said we create it. Because I was going to ask, do you feel like you receive magic, engage in it, create in it, right? Like we've
All
touched
of
a little bit, but yeah,
the above.
it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be passive, right? It doesn't have to be a waiting and receptive game.
No, it doesn't. And in fact, something just came to me. I believe that any act of creativity is magic. So I think if you are artistic or creative in any way, what no matter what it is, that in and of itself is magic, and you can feel magical, and you can even create the magic with that as well.
I love that because I also feel like you have to be actively participating, giving, looking for, receiving, in all aspects of magic to receive the big magic, right? Like we've talked about luck on the show. We've talked about,
Um,
um, things just kind of falling into place in some areas of our life and things like that. And I'm not entirely sure I could say that any of that has ever happened to me when I've just been wallowing and waiting and demanding and asking,
I
right?
don't think wallowing, they always say like, uh, uh, what's the word? Like not creates, but it's like
Attracts.
magnetize, attracts. Yes,
Like
that's the word.
attracts like.
Like attracts like. Wallow does not attract magic
And it
because it's
sucks
not the
because when
same
you're
as water.
wallowing is when you need it. But I don't
Exactly
really,
when you need it.
I don't want, I really, as much as I need it, I don't want to be rewarded for it. I don't need no reason to not try and help the universe. I think like the magic when you're wallowing is the universe like giving you a hand and being like, I'm gonna slowly help to pull you up while you also climb, right? And then we'll give you something big later.
Yeah. But it's one of those things, like you said, how do you get out of that? Like, like especially, when people talk about law of attraction, this is a little bit off the topic of magic, but not that far off the topic. And to say to someone, well, you just have to visualize it. If What are you going to say that to somebody who's unhoused and
Like they don't visualize having housing.
right. But also it's once again kind of that privilege of
Mm-hmm.
it. Like you do have a certain level of privilege if you can feel the magic, and to understand that and not to be judging other people for not living
Well,
or attracting what you think they should be.
and there's so many people that use the word I manifested this when it's like, you did the work and put yourself in situations to receive it and then it happened. So I'm glad it felt magical to you, but there's a lot of things that were just like, you did it.
Now, I mean, I will say that one time in Duluth when I was 13 and I threw a penny into Lake Superior. Sorry about that, Lake Superior. And because we all threw a penny into Lake
Yeah.
Superior and made a wish, and I was 13. And it's the first time I ever saw a body of water that large and with waves that strong. And I said, I want to live by the ocean someday, and threw that penny in. And the next year we were moving to Rhode Island because my mom had gotten remarried. And now I couldn't be in the high school I was going to go to. I was like, what's this,
What did I
universe?
do? I flew
So
too
that
close to
I
the sun.
did. That was like, there
Well,
was no work on my end.
so on TikTok, they have all these sounds and they're like, use this sound and XYZ will happen to you. It's like the new chain letter, right? Like interact 3 times and use this sound even on private and your crush will text you and this and that. And I see all these people use it and they're like, yeah, I've been applying to my dream jobs nonstop for 6 weeks. And after I used this sound, I got an interview. And it was like, well, you applied to jobs for 6 weeks and then patiently waited. Right.
Something
And
was
so,
going
like,
to happen.
for me, when I look at like moments of magic in my life that got me to where I am, I was really unhappy at my job and I was actively looking and applying for work. And the
Mm-hmm.
moment of magic for me was the one that went, oh, go directly to the Hennepin County Library website and see if they're hiring anyone right now. Right? Like it wasn't go to Hennepin, it wasn't go to this. And there was a great job for me there. But then I did the work, right? Like the moment of magic was just like this thought, and I responded to and engaged in the thought, but then I did the work.
Yeah, it was the idea to do it, and
Yes.
then you did the work. So,
Or,
and I think that people forget that you're not getting the whole
yes.
entree, right? You're getting the menu, or
Like
you're
let's
getting the
say
waiter.
you are down and out, or even just you're on the struggle bus, right? Like we were
Yeah,
saying, magical adventure or a struggle. And let's say you're like, God, I just need $70,000 to like level the playing field. Just like, please help a girl out, get me some cash. And instead of winning the lottery that night, you get a really great idea for something you have to produce and market and sell. And you don't do it. And then you're mad you didn't win the lottery. Right. And God was like, I gave you a personal ticket. Right. Like you didn't even have to play. You didn't have to know which of the 10 games to play. I gave you the idea, or I gave you space for all these ideas you've been having. And I've said, this is the one, and you didn't do it because or it's like that guy who's like on the roof of his house like in the middle of a flood, and a guy in a boat comes and is like, hey, can I help you? And he's like, no, God'll save me. And then a guy in a helicopter comes and he's like, nope, God's got this. And then he drowns and he gets to heaven and God's like, what are you doing here? And he goes, you were supposed to save me. And he's like, I sent you a guy on a boat and a helicopter. What are you doing here? Right. So you have to
so you have to
you
be
have
open
to
to
not.
all
Yes.
the different ways it could look.
I feel like these magical moments are just about being open, right? Like I fell
Yes.
in love with somebody I never would have met or would have paid attention to. I got a
Yeah.
job somewhere I never would have dreamed. Like all these people that talk about these huge moments in their life and all this magic, the story is usually predicated by, oh, I never would have done that. But I did something I never would have done.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. But so, we've talked about all these different things around magic. Um, and I think everybody, when we kind of like thinking about like how to embrace magic, how to call in magic, how to live a more magical, adventurous life, or whatever we started the show out with, I think there's a couple questions to kind of consider because we're nothing if not, I was going to say intuitive. That is not the word
I
I
was going to
was
say
looking for.
questionable, but no.
Questionable. Introspective was the I word I was looking for.
Yes, there you
Introspective
go.
here. So I'm gonna ask all these and then you can kind of, if you want to answer one, you can or add on. Where do you need to create magic in your life? Where are you walking magic? Like, where does
Mm.
magic just happen? Where are you forcing magic?
Oh, oh, oh.
Where are you lacking magic?
Mm.
Where do you want to breathe magic into your life? And finally, is there magic you haven't alchemized into reality? And this is the one I feel like I've been struggling with for 3 years,
Yeah.
where there's very specific things I ask for, I manifest, I use my thoughts for, and I feel like all the ingredients are around me. And until recently, I didn't realize I was actively putting up a wall against what I was actively trying to manifest into
It's
my
so
life.
interesting. Where did I just hear that? Was that Minnow Pontero? Where
Really?
he
I haven't
said,
watched him all year.
he's,
Yeah.
yeah, where he said, you say you want a cake. Well, maybe you don't get a cake, but maybe you get flour and sugar and, an egg, and you get all the ingredients, and then you're mad because you didn't get a cake, but you've got all the ingredients right there to make a cake.
Oh, and see what I'm talking about is more I am telling the universe, I want a cake. I want a cake any way I can have it. Give me cake, cake,
Oh,
cake. And then the universe puts all this cake around me. And in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm on a diet. I shouldn't have cake. I don't really want cake. But outwardly, I'm telling everybody how much I want that cake. And I'm ready for that cake to come in my life. But then my daily activities, actions, and needs are so anti cake, and I'm not like is what I like I'm not in congruence with what I think I want, right? Or I
yeah.
haven't done the work to be ready for the cake. I don't have the serving platter, I don't have plates and forks, and so I just feel like I can't have this cake yet, right? And some of it is very subconscious and some of it isn't. Like I said, it's a recent revelation where I was like, man,
What a
everything
good
in your life,
revelation,
right?
though.
Like,
Yeah.
what have I been doing for 3 years? Why did it take this long? And the opportunities I've missed out on cake, man.
Wow. So I think that these are wonderful questions, and I am not going to answer one right now because I think we'd go over time, but definitely we'll put them in a post on Instagram next week. Pinky swear I'll do it. Um, yeah,
But so with that, I'm going to lead you. This is part of that morning meditation from Abraham/Esther Hicks. I'll see
yeah.
if I can also link that in Instagram. But I'm going to leave you with my favorite part of the whole thing. Today, I intend to feel exhilaration about things not yet manifested.
I actually love that because it can build excitement. I
So be
love
excited about magical moments, whether they happen or not.
I love that. Oh my gosh. If you love this episode, please share it with a friend. And if you have time, give us some love on your preferred platform with a rate, review, and subscribe. You can also reach out to us via Instagram and YouTube under The Brightly Podcast or via email at brightlypodcast@gmail.com.
And with that, we hope you have a bright and beautiful and magical day. Bye.